We're joined by Representative Omari Hardy. He is a state representative for Florida's 88th district. Now, you may recognize him from a video that went viral when he spoke firmly about the COVID pandemic and the response coming from that city commission. Representative Hardy, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm okay. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
The pleasure is ours. Before we talk about the clip that went super viral, I want to talk about what's happening in Florida right now. Rebecca and I both are from Florida. Matter of fact, I think you and I went to rival high schools. I went to Ely High School and you went to Dillard High School, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we all have our roots there. And what's really concerning to us is how Ron DeSantis is rolling out the vaccines, or better yet, withholding some vaccines, and the plan, the strategy, and the impact that it's having, particularly on Black communities. Can you speak to what you're witnessing from your vantage point as a state representative?
Well, to the extent that the governor thinks at all about what he does before he does it, Black people have been an afterthought to him and the people in his orbit. Right now, the vaccination rate among eligible African Americans in my county is about half that of the vaccination rate for eligible white residents. And that is an improvement from the situation a few weeks ago. And rather than recognizing that there's an issue here that he has to address, the governor is holding press conferences boasting about not having a plan, talking about how it's better for Florida not to have a plan. And so it's just very unfortunate to see this situation folding out. Black people have obviously been hit hard on the front side of this pandemic, overrepresented in the hospitalizations, overrepresented in the deaths. And as we're coming out of this thing, we're underrepresented in the vaccination rate, right? And so basically, the governor doesn't care that Black people will be the last people to get sick from this virus and the last people to die from it in Florida because of his lack of leadership. And that's just extremely troubling.
The fact that DeSantis is able to get away with this level of incompetence and actually brag about this incompetence, because for any governor during a pandemic to say that there is no plan, it just reeks of mediocrity, and it reeks of a level of privilege that no one else could ever get away with, especially if you were a Black male governor. If Andrew Gillum had won that race, there's absolutely no way this same party, DeSantis and his Republican Party, would tolerate not having a strategy that effectively covered as many people with vaccinations. What is the response then from the leaders of various communities to this type of incompetence leading that state at such a critical turning point when we have vaccinations? But if we don't get ahead of these variants that are going around, DeSantis can actually help kill tens of thousands more Floridians.
Well, you know what? The response has varied based on who you are, right? So lots of people on the ground are completely and utterly shocked, befuddled by what Governor DeSantis is and is not doing. But the closer you are to power, the more likely you are to be silent about his lack of leadership. And so, I just think it's very important that we push back on what the governor is saying. We can't hear a governor of the third largest state in America. We have 20 million people here, 20+% of our residents are seniors. We cannot accept that our governor does not have a plan. When he says something like that, we can't argue over whether what he says is true. It's obviously not true. The question is, how should we respond to that? That's the only argument that we should be having right now.
Yes, I mean, you're totally right, Representative Hardy. And it's funny because you're from my hometown, or you represent my hometown of West Palm Beach, Florida. And there's a lot of things that are out there that we've been questioning for a long time. So it's great to have you as a representative out there. When you see DeSantis do DeSantis, however we say his name, because look, DeSantis, want to make sure I get it right. But when we see him doing these things and literally stopping the community from moving forward by giving everybody access to these COVID-19 vaccinations and things like that. Black people are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to all of these, a lot of states. It's not only down there in South Florida, but, you know, what are things that you're doing now in the moment to try to get people to, you know, respond better or to acknowledge it? And are you, and are you getting any pushback around you?
Yeah, well, look, you know, to the extent that I have an opportunity to do so, I call out the governor on his failure to do right by Black people. I'll just give you one example. We were able to secure about 500 vaccines, which is a small amount, but not insignificant. I mean, you're talking about 500 lives here for the Black community here in West Palm Beach. We brought those vaccines to a church in the Northwest community. And we were not able to close that event to people just in the community. So what ended up happening was that you had people come from all over the county, people who are never in that community, come to get a vaccine. Now, contrast that with what happened in Manatee County on the West Coast, where Governor DeSantis brought in vaccines. He brought them into particular gated communities that happened to be built in by the developer who's a donor of his, and he closed those distribution sites.
Wow.
People from outside of that community. So if you weren't in those communities, if you weren't in those zip codes, you did not have access to those vaccines, right? And so you see what happens when you bring vaccines into the Black community, and you see what happens when you bring vaccines to affluent white communities that are owned and developed by your wealthy donors. There's a disparate treatment. Right now in the Glades, there's a vaccination site in Pahokee, and it is not closed. You can come in from anywhere in the county to this majority Black neighborhood, this majority Black community, and get vaccines. But in other cases, we've seen them close to people who are on the outside. It's the disparate impact. It's the disparate treatment. You have to call it out. You have to point it out.
Wow.
You have to kill people.
Can I?
Go ahead.
I just want him to highlight something that so in the Black communities, just to put a fine point on this, in predominantly Black communities, the sites are open and people can come from anywhere and get a vaccine. But in these well-to-do, probably affluent white communities, they close the doors, they put the gates up, and you can't come get it. And you're already talking about a small amount of vaccinations in the first place that these Black communities are getting. Are we literally seeing, like, what's the breakdown? Like, is there a study yet about the breakdown in those two different scenarios, in the open setting for vaccines in Black communities and the closed setting? I'm just wondering how many people from outside of the communities are snatching up these vaccines away from the Black community.
So
is there any numbers on that yet?
Yes. So I would really like to see that granular data. The fact of the matter is the vaccine event that, I was a part of, I can tell you that there were probably about 200 or so people out of the 500 vaccines who came from outside of the community to get it. This is just how it is in Florida. I mean, the governor, again, when he came to Palm Beach County shortly after Christmas, he came to Kings Point, which is in South County, majority white community and a gated community, held a press conference, brought vaccines in, and those vaccines were available only to people in Kings Point. But when he went to, again, Pahokee a few weeks ago, people can come from all over to get those vaccines. So it's just a tragedy. And it, again, just goes to show that he's not really thinking about us, right? So he rolls out these plans to the extent that we can call them plans. The plans leave Black people out in the cold. Black people cry out for fairness. And then he scrambles and responds with these press conferences and these one-time events here or there. And even then the events are not close to the community. When we had a follow-up event for vaccine distribution after, the one I did in the church in the Northwest community here in West Palm Beach, we had to keep it on a low. We were not making any announcements. We were not putting anything on social media. We had to go, pretty much strictly by, word of mouth and shoe leather to make sure that the people who got those vaccines who were notified of it were only the people from those communities. It shouldn't have to be that way. There are obvious steps that the governor could take to prevent that from happening, but he's simply not doing it because he doesn't care.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things that he's not doing. Now that's one part, that's COVID-19. And we see him not doing what he needs to do. And I'm pretty sure there are a long list of things. I know while we were in the green room, we were discussing how he is trying to make protesting something that's illegal. Can you speak on that?
Well, look, we have 99 problems in Florida. Protesting is not one of them. We have people lining up for miles to get food because if they don't get it, they're going to go hungry. We have people who still haven't gotten their unemployment benefits, even though they've applied for them. In some cases now, almost a year ago. We have children who have basically lost a year of their education. We have businesses, small businesses that have been shuttered. And the governor's response to all of this is to ignore it, to not propose any legislation to fix our broken unemployment system, to not give any direct aid to small businesses or to human beings who are not corporations. His response to this is to propose legislation to attack our First Amendment rights, to attack the Black Lives Matter movement, to restrict voting rights. And now we have a bill to basically limit the Bright Futures program, which if you're from Florida, is a lifeline for many people, one of the only ways that they can be able to afford higher education. And so this is what we're seeing. Look, this is the most important legislative session that we're about to go into starting on Tuesday, probably the most important legislative session in the history of the state. We have people who are struggling to survive. And the only thing that the governor has saw fit to do is throw red meat to his base as he prepares to run for president. I think it's despicable. I think it's disgusting. And I think it just goes to show that he doesn't give a damn about people in Florida who serve him. And, a lot of people who are elected to office, you have to walk a fine line because you might not want to get on the governor's side. You might need the governor's cooperation to, do what you can do for your people. But the fact of the matter is my silence cannot be bought for crumbs. And my people are going to end up getting sick and dying from this disease. And they're losing their jobs and whatever wealth they had is being rapidly eroded and destroyed. We can't let this happen without saying something about it.
Yeah. No, I'm right with you. I felt all of it, so you're not giving a damn to the people getting crumbs. I felt all of it. And I think that West Palm Beach, because I've never seen, we've had some good leaders, but in my, lifetime where I'm able to understand, partner with, it's good to know that we have somebody out there in West Palm Beach, because that's where my mama and my daddy at. And to have somebody out there who's fighting for things that I speak about every day, but you're right there on the ground. You see it going on and you're speaking up for it. And I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah. And you've been speaking up for COVID and the reaction and the response from these leaders who have a responsibility to provide for the people in these crisis situations. You've been speaking up on it for a very long time, since the beginning of the pandemic. I want to play a portion of the clip where I first discovered your voice. And I think as we play it, I think a lot of people are going to recognize it because it was very powerful. It was powerful at the time. Let's play that clip.
Can we do better? There's always things that pop up that we can do better on. And I call the question.
I'm sorry. That's not how this works. We each have an opportunity to speak 5 minutes.
I thought we did.
Yeah, the question's been called.
I'm sorry. And that's not how calling the question works. You need a second and you need to vote on it.
Then I have a second for calling the question.
So are you telling me that you're going to keep me from talking right now?
You've talked all evening.
Look here. You're calling me disrespectful because I've interrupted people, but this gentleman has turned off people's lights in the middle of a global health pandemic. That's what that gentleman did.
Point of order.
And you think I'm disrespectful for interrupting you?
Point of order.
This gentleman has had the ability to do any number of things. We could have banned large gatherings. We could have closed the beach. We could have put a moratorium on utility shutoffs.
I recessed.
Also not within your power, and the attorney has held that that's true.
I recessed the meeting.
Oh, listen, I remember this like it was yesterday.
New rules at the beginning of the meeting, and then you didn't even want to follow the rules that you came up with. This is a banana republic is what you're turning this place into with your so-called leadership.
Does a recess mean that we will be...
Yes.
Camera on that?
I don't care anything about this.
On that?
I don't care anything about this. We should have been talking about this last week. We cut off people's utilities this week and made them pay what could have been their last check to us to turn their lights on in a global health pandemic. But you don't care about that. You didn't want to meet.
My shining
but every other year you go around and beg people for their votes.
Can we explain
But
the
you care
recess?
more about your relationship with that guy than you care about the relationship with the people who don't go to work in this building.
Order, you were done. You were done.
Girl, he been done.
She had no
It's
idea.
disrespectful is what you've done to the working people in the city.
I didn't do anything.
Come on.
You failed to act.
I didn't do anything.
When you're a leader, you failed to act. You said you didn't do anything. You failed to act
Omari
when you had an opportunity.
She wasn't done.
I don't care anything about that. You think anybody cares?
Does a recess mean that we can reconvene tonight?
They try to figure out, what do we do?
This black
do we
man
do?
went off. Can we speak, sir? Look,
He's like,
5 minutes
seriously?
or,
does this mean we can go eat lunch? That's what he was
because
saying.
I've been hungry. Listen, when I watch that, I feel that passion like nobody's business. Listen, I understand and I know you were at the point, especially we have to understand that the beginning of that pandemic, you know, when we watched, and I know you watching what was happening to your people, then you felt like, how are we doing this? And these people are sitting here acting like nothing's going on. We can just recess. We can just do this. When people were literally dying, people had no lights, people didn't have no food. I felt that passion, and I couldn't imagine going back to the beginning of the pandemic and the government and the people surrounding us and our leaders not wanting to assist us. So us seeing you do that, that gave us some kind of like, that was real. And I appreciate that. My God.
You know, thank you. Lake Worth is 10 minutes from Mar-a-Lago, but it's the second poorest city in Palm Beach County.
Talk about it.
And our residents, if anybody was going to go through it, the residents of Lake Worth Beach were going to go through it. And what you saw in that clip, that was 3 years condensed into 3 minutes. So we had all these skirmishes over the past 3 years about whether or not we were going to treat our working class residents like they were our constituents too. But that moment and what was happening there, the tremendous amount of uncertainty and the anguish that people were feeling, it was too much for me. And I had filed about 5 months before that to run for office, and I went home with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, and we were like, yeah, it's over. We were like, it's done. They got me on video yelling at this white lady.
It's over.
You gotta be careful yelling at these Karens, man. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I was struggling. You know, I don't know if you noticed, but at the end of the video, when she walked out the room, in my head, I was like, you know, normally I would walk out of that door, but I could not go into that room with her because as bad as the optics already were, the idea of me, chasing down this white lady in this other room, and that was why I stood there. Yeah. You know, it was, man.
That was an excellent call. You
that was the first thing we probably all saw. Like, that was he good. Better not go behind that lady.
don't go. But I love that she actually thought that you were done. I appreciate that you thought that you were done because of the sincerity of the moment. But me doing this kind of work, as soon as that was over, I would have been like, oh no, we about to blow, because speaking truth to power in that way, in that moment with that passion at the beginning of the pandemic was exactly what everybody needed to hear. And so it's just so funny. She thought you were done because, you know, now you are on the ascent. Like you are able to impact these issues at a greater level in your position as a state representative and beyond that. So we only have a few moments left here, but tell the people like what you want them to focus on in terms of your work and how they can support you in what you're doing.
Well, look, we need leaders in state government in every state in America who are going to be unapologetic about their advocacy for the community. And when we get these leaders, they can't be alone, right? And so, we need more progressives in state legislatures across the country, because it makes it easier for us to operate. When you get progressives in the legislature, it's almost like you're out on an island. And so if you want us to be effective, we have to be elected in numbers. Find someone in your community. If you want to help me, find someone who's a progressive in your community to get elected to office, so that they don't have the moments that I just had a year ago on that city commission, or the moments that we're likely to have in the state legislature coming up. We need to be in places of power, in numbers. That's what we need.
Yes.
That's what we need.
Look, because Ben, you heard me coming in.
Yeah. Hey.
No, one last thing, Rep. I just wanted to point out that yes, Ben, she thought you were done, or you thought you were done, but the fact that she thought
that's the funny part.
She thought when she said she was done that you were going to be done, but you were like, listen. No one's going to shut me down. No one's going to shut me up, and that's exactly the kind of quality Black representatives that we need in these spaces. And you did that. And you are on ascent. You are going to, especially when you come on platforms like this, you know, everybody needs to follow you, which we're going to get your information soon. But Ben, get that point in. I see that you want to.
No. It just dawned on me, like, how well do you, because we just had former state representative Chevron Jones on the show last Friday. I'm pretty sure you guys are connected well. And those are the type of people, like, you're right. Yes. We got to send up with the reinforcements for you guys.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And Senator Jones and I actually have a bill together.
Awesome. Could you tell us about the bill? Yeah.
Yeah, it's on urban gun violence, right? And so, you know, obviously when people think of gun violence, unfortunately, we think about the mass shootings that make the news, captivate, you know, the national, attention, right? But urban gun violence is unfolding every single day. And we're not focused on how to make sure that people's needs are provided for, so that these tragic incidents aren't happening, right? And so Senator Chevron Jones and I have a bill to focus the state's attention on addressing this problem in an intelligent, evidence-based way that's not based on people's talking points and politics.
Well, that sounds like that's another necessary thing that people ain't focused on, but you are, and that's very important. Before we get out of here, Representative Hardy, could you let people know where they can find you, where they can follow you, the website, any information that they need?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Omari J. Hardy, and you can follow me on Instagram at Omari Hardy, and my website is omarihardy.com. Look, I worked really hard to put my issues out there. You know, so visit my website, omarihardy.com, and you can see the vision that I have for the state of Florida. A better Florida is possible, but we need people with imagination and conviction and courage to pursue these things.
Oh, right there. And with that being said, a better Florida is possible.